Hi there, welcome to video number 7 in a sequence that I'm looking at using Axis and Ohs in a slightly different way to program up an aircraft. What I'm going to do is create templates for individual items of the avionics, so that if I come to create another aircraft and it's got that particular avionic device in it, I can just drop that template in and it speeds up my development. I also want to use the input events, Microsoft's input events, which are better because they also deal with most of them deal with the animation quite nicely, so that knobs look like they're turning on the screen. And also it's got out of range protection built into it, that if you try to make a variable go below 0 and it shouldn't do, it doesn't cause strange things to happen. Previously you had to program that in yourself and make sure that certain variables that you were changing didn't go out of range. So it's a sequence of videos. What I'll do is when I publish them, I'll put a link in the description to all the other videos in this sequence. So if you need to jump backwards and forwards, you can do that. So let's have a look at what I'm going to try and do this time. So we've done the templates for the 530, the 430, the autopilot, the transponder, the ADF. That's all done. So it's really what's in the background here on this cockpit. So it'll be working with some of these rotary controllers and applying those, and one or two switches and dials, like the lighting for instance and things like that we'll be dealing with. In terms of the layout on the X-Touch, it's these ones here that we'll be allocating. So the barometer, and I'm also going to double up and use that for the gyro as well. If you look back in the cockpit here, this is what I'm talking about here. It's the pressure setting for the altitude gauge, the altimeter. I've heard it pronounced both ways, but that one there anyway. So I'm also going to put on the same rotary this gyro drift here. I've got it switched off as a moment as a failure, but as I'm sort of creeping into more and more realism, I really ought to deal with the fact that the gyroscope does drift, and you need to calibrate it from time to time with your compass. So I've got it there as an option. Obviously the heading bug, that's important, so I'll put that in there. And these settings here, the OBS 1, or the VOR 1, VOR 2, the OBS buttons on those we'll be putting in. So that'll be allocated here, but this one being the dual function one. So pressing the end here will toggle between the two. I use the same rotary to do OBS 1 and 2, and again that will toggle here, and the heading will be on its own. Doesn't need to be in a separate place. So obviously I'll be using Axis and Ohs to do this, and let's bring in our cockpit as well. So I'll be sort of switching backwards and forwards between the PowerPoint presentation to make things clear and Axis and Ohs. So it'll be a bit of sort of switching going on. So firstly we need to write a piece of code, a bit of script, so that when we press the button it toggles backwards and forwards between doing the barometer and doing the gyro. So this is a variable that I'm creating. It's a local variable, so because I create it, just out of convention I call it my gyro, so it doesn't clash with anything else that anybody else may create. And this is the script for it. When you create the variable, by default it's 0. That means it won't be doing the gyro, it'll be doing the barometer by default. But when I press the button, which I'm going to allocate in a second, this command here says get that value, which is 0, and invert it to make it a 1 and write it back into here. So then it becomes a 1, and it knows, or I know, that I'm now controlling the gyro. It's true that I want to do the gyro. Press it again and it inverts it and puts it back to 0 again. So that's how it works. So let's get into Axis and Ohs. So I'm going to be allocating it to this button here, that gyro there, and it's on bank A, because I'm going to use that in flight fairly often, so I don't want to have to keep remembering to put it into bank B. So this is a bank A, layer A function. So first thing is, in the scripts, I've got the scripts already written, and I've created a group here for my C172 530 cockpit. And you make the groups here by managing the script groups and just type it in and add, and it creates like a folder system here. So these are where my scripts are, and what I want to do is to toggle between the gyro and the barometer. So I literally just type that in. You're not going to get it from anywhere else, because you have invented this variable. So you type it in, and then you tell it which group you want it, give it a sensible title, and click save as new, and that's it. We've got that. So to use it, to allocate it, we've got to hunt that down. It will appear in here. You'll find my scripts, and will appear here. You can sort of filter down as much as you need to. So if I could just go for I want to filter down to my cockpit, which is here, and then I'm looking for that toggle. So the gyro barometer toggle, double click, and I'm just going to allocate that by literally pressing the button here, making sure I'm in layer A, press the button, and that's it, that's done. So we click on add, and that's now allocated. There's no real way of testing it other than sort of watching your own variable change, so but I'm pretty sure that's going to work. So now I want to allocate the rotary action to this, and so both of them are increase or decrease depending which way you rotate this. What we need to do is to use our script now to find out which one of these you wanted to actually control. So this is the script for it. It says look at the value of your variable and compare it to 0 and see if they're equal. So that's how it works. They get the two values and check if they're equal. If it is equal, i.e. if it's 0, that means you wanted to adjust the barometer, and the key event for that is the Colesman. So I'm going to send 1 to the Colesman increase function, and the same here. If it's not true, that means I wanted to do the same to the gyro. I wanted to send a 1 to the increase for the gyro drift. So that's how what we will be allocating to the right hand turn. And if you're turning it in the opposite direction, obviously you wanted to do a decrease, and it's exactly the same structure. See which one of the devices we're trying to connect to, and send a 1 to the decrease, or 1 to the gyro drift decrease. So that's the script we need to call. So again, if we go back into here and just allocate those scripts. So I want my 172 cockpit, and I want the gyro baro increase script to happen when I turn this one to the right. If you've not done one of these before, you need to turn the knob at least twice. If you turn it just once, it'll know that you've clicked it. If you actually turn it twice in a particular direction, it knows which direction you mean. So we'll add that one, and we'll do the same here for the decrease version. And I said, if I just turn it once, you'll see it just says click. Turn it a second time and it knows I meant to the left. Now, I said I wanted to use the input events as much as possible. There are some input events on here if we go and look at one of those. So if I go back into my scripting, into my scripts editor, if I wanted to put in an event, for the gyro, there is one for the gyro drift. The problem with it is that it works in radians. Similarly with the pressure, it works in hectopascals or millibars. It's not working in inches of mercury. The math gets a little bit more complicated. You can do it. You can actually convert. You could do a conversion yourself and work out what the degrees are that, or how many radians you'd need to move it up by 1 degree. But I don't see that there's much to be gained by doing that, to be honest. So I'm staying with the kind of old school key events. But you can explore that if that's what you want to do, if you want to have a look at that. But anyway, let's go and test these allocations, just to make sure that they're working. So when I turn this one here, you'll see that that's controlling that gauge up and down quite happily. If I press on there, we should now be working and changing the gyro drift. So you can see the card here is working in both directions. Press it again and we're back to changing the barometer setting here. So that all works fine. And we're going to use a pretty similar technique here for the OBS as well. So let's just bring that back in. So again, I need to have a variable which will toggle, telling me which OBS I'm working with. And by default it will be 0, and if I press on the button it'll be 1. So again, that will be in my scripting here. So I've already written all the scripts for it. So I've got an OBS toggle script here, so we can allocate that OBS toggle, and just press on the end of this button here and that's allocated. So I've got the scripts here. Now this variable here will change between 0 and 1, but the OBS, well, the VORs are labelled 1 and 2. So here's the logic for it. That if your value is 0, you're controlling the top one, which is what you want to control mostly by default anyway. So this one here asks it to read the value. So if you're using the input events, then there will be a variable associated with it that you can read. So if you know the name of the input event, you know the name of the variable. So you find the value, whatever direction it's pointing at the moment, and you add 1 to it and write it back into that instrument, into that VOR. If it's not 0, then you must be controlling the other one. So you've got a variable for instrument number 2, add 1 to it and write it back in. So that's the increase done. Now, to be honest with you, that's a relatively slow change. If you're trying to quickly change course, you've got to rotate the controller quite a way to get all the way around. So you can have a fast increase as well. So What I do is I allocate it so it changes it by 5 degrees rather than 1 degree if you're turning the knob a bit faster. And you can do the same for the decrease. The decrease obviously is exactly the same structure, it's just got a -1 here, so you're taking 1 off of it. And if you want to do a fast decrease, you take 5 off of it. So there's a bit of extra allocation to do. So let's go back into Axis and Ohs and start to allocate some stuff. So we've got the OBS toggle in. We want to add the increase, the OBS increase. So OBS increase in, and we'll just turn the knob in the right direction and click add, and then we can add the fast version of that as well. OBS increased fast, so it's calling a different script, and we tell it we'll do that if we turn the knob a bit faster. And you can change the sensitivity by changing that figure there, but I'm going to leave it as default at the moment. So same rotary, turned in the same direction, click add, and we'll just do the decrease ones now as well. So just turning the rotary in the opposite direction this time. So that's the ordinary one going in, and now we'll do the fast one. OBS decrease fast, that direction, and I'm just clicking that button. And again, we'll go back into the cockpit and we'll just test it out, just check that things are working okay. So I'm doing OBS 1, so if I turn it gently, you see it increasing, decrease. If I turn it more quickly, you'll see it's swinging around. And in fact, let's bring Axis and Ohs into view so you can see what's going on. So if you watch the green lights here, you should see when I do an ordinary decrease, it's just triggering that one. If I do a quicker one, you can see it triggering the fast turn, and the same if I do the increase, a slow increase and a fast increase, you can see that it triggers the other script. And we'll just check this doing OBS 2. It is fast and slow for the fine. So that works absolutely beautifully. Okay, let's bring PowerPoint back in again. So that's done, that's done. Heading. Okay, so the heading bug, there is a Microsoft one of these input events for it, but again the variable works in radians, so it's not particularly convenient. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rely on the original key event and keep this one a bit more, just keep it simple. So if we look for the heading event here, you'll find it in flight assistance, and it's got the heading bug increase and decrease. So if we just do an increase here, and we'll just turn that to the right and click on add, and we'll do the same for the decrease. Flight assistance, heading bug, decrease, turn that opposite direction. So it's increasing and decreasing. So that's pretty much it for that one. So heading bug is done. While we're in the cockpit, we might as well add the lights, and if I bring the cockpit into play and show you where I'm going with this. There are a couple of lighting controls. Firstly, these ones here, these are stacked rotaries, and one does the radio lighting, one does the background panel lighting here, and this one here does the glare shield. There's some lights here and the pedestal down here. So effectively there's 4 controls here, but they're stacked for convenience. And up in the ceiling here we've also got 2 floodlights. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allocate them. Again, each one's going to have a toggle, and this is going to be on layer B, because you're not going to use them very often in flight. So you switch to layer B, and we'll have a toggle here which will toggle between the radio and panel, because those are the stacked rotaries there. This one here will toggle the glare shield or pedestal, and this one here will toggle whether we're doing the left or right floodlight at the top. So it's relatively simple script. So if I just talk you through the script and show you what they look like. So for the first one, obviously we're going to need a variable so we know whether we're doing the radio lights or not, and press the button does its toggle trick as before. The script for it, if I'm doing the increase, check the variable, and then we know whether we're going to be controlling lighting panel 1 or the glare shield. Fast version of that, again, if I turn the knob faster, then it'll be doing an increment of 5. So you notice it's called glare shield 2. Decrease, same structure, but we're going to subtract 1 or subtract 5, depending if we're doing the slow version or the fast version. If we're doing the pedestal light, so the glare shield itself at the back, we are going to be looking at creating a variable called my ped lights. Call it what you like, but that's what I've called it. And there's the toggle version, so when I press the button it will toggle. And this one is going to change the lighting of the pedestal. I don't know why it's mistyped, but it has always been like that. Historically, they've always called the variable and event has always been pedestal. Else we'll be changing glare shield 1. That's the increment version, so we're adding 1 to it. The fast increment will be adding 5 to it. The decrease one will be subtracting 1 or subtracting 5 for the fast version. So we can allocate those pretty quickly. We can get those sorted out as we've got the scripts already written. So if we bring Axis and Ohs back in, and we can just do those allocations. So in my cockpit, let's do the radio and panel, so that's this one here. So I want the toggle allocated there. Oh, we need to make sure we're on layer B. Okay, so I noticed that because I noticed what the actual event number was. So that's allocated to that toggle there. Layer B, click add. Again, in my script area, I want the radio panel increase. So turn that, click add, and the fast increase. Same control, turn in the same direction, but telling it's a fast turn. So that's in there. And we'll do the decrease. my radio panel decrease, so the orderly decrease is turning to the left. And decrease fast. And now we can do the glare shield pedestal bit. So there's the glare pedestal toggle. Press the button on the end of that. And we'll allocate the fast and slow versions of those. In fact, I wonder if I can. No, it's just as quick. I was thinking about duplicating it, but actually you've got to go and find the script anyway, so nothing much to be gained for it. Increase fast. And what we could do now, just pop into the cockpit and check those out. So what we need to do really is change the time. And we'll just check out what's going on. So I'm going to do this one first. In fact, if I just turn them all down to start with. So, if I do the radio one first of all, if you watch the lighting behind the panel here, so that's instrument one, and let's do the radio one. So that's radio, increasing and decreasing. This is the instruments here. And if I go down low enough, it also turns the backlight off on the clock over here. So that's radio and instruments. And this one here should be either the glare shield at the back or the pedestal lights here. Let's turn the pedestal light right down. So that's the glare shield going up and down. And the pedestal lights going up and down. We've still got some lights on because I haven't done anything about these floodlights yet. So let's go and allocate those. I've called them cabin lights here. So we've got the cabin light toggle, which will go on the end of this one here. So cabin lights increasing. And decreasing. And again, we'll just go and check those out. So the code behind that, I've just got a variable called my cabin light, which again will toggle, and I set it to move in increments of 5 because 1 was just painfully slow, but actually 5 is fairly slow as well. So I might play with that number and see if I can speed up and up, but again we don't use it that often in flight. But anyway, it just uses that variable there to check whether we are controlling cabin light 1 or cabin light 2, and it just toggles between the two. So it's very much the same structure for all of these. So the last one I'm going to look at here, if I go back into the cockpit, there is a button here which switches the source between GPS or nav. So when you go into nav mode, are we following instructions from the GPS or are we using the VOR here for the course? Now, don't often use that button there. We tend to do that from the CDI button here. That does exactly the same function. In fact, you can see they're slaved together. But just for completeness, what I'm doing is I'm going to allocate those to, if I just switch that down here, I'm allocating that to this function here, this button here, so I can flick that switch and change between the two sources. So there's no scripting involved in it. But if you search for navcom_GPS, it's here, and it's the navigation mode here. So you double click on there and allocate that. So I've got that set at 1 at the moment. I'm going to allocate that by clicking that button up and click on add, and then we'll do the same again. We'll do Navcom GPS navigation, but we'll make this a 0 this time and allocate it to the button in the opposite direction and click on add. So that should now switch between nav mode and GPS mode. And you can see that by pressing that switch here, it's also slaved to here. So it's not just working that one, it's working that one as well every time I switch that over. We can still override it here with the CDI. So that actually overrides anything you do with that switch. So you can leave that alone really. Just got it there. I'm guessing it's, if they have a failure here on the GPS, you've still got access to it here, and you can control it with your own physical switch there. So that seems to work quite happily. Last little bit, I've got an LED script that I'm running. If I bring my camera back up again. I want to use the indicator lights here so I know whether I'm in barometer or gyroscope mode, and I also want to know whether I'm controlling OBS 1 or 2. So the first one here, it looks at the OBS, and if I'm controlling number 1, OBS 1, then I want it to switch all of the LEDs in that ring off. So that's the command here that does that. I've sort of dealt with this a number of times before, but this is how we write to MIDI, and I'm writing to that one there. They're labelled 9, 10, 11, 12. So this is number 12. I'm sending a 0 to bulb 12, and I'm sending it over MIDI to device number 7. Now I know mine is device number 7. If you don't know what yours is, if you look at show MIDI devices and look here, look for your X-Touch Mini and you'll get the ID number there. So to device number 7, it's a CC that we're sending over channel 1. All outputs go over channel 1. Only device number 7 is going to respond to this command, and it's going to rotary 12. If I'm not controlling number 1, I must be controlling OBS 2, so I want you to switch all of the LEDs on that ring. So that's 27 is the code to turn everything on, so it's the same thing that's being sent. So I'm setting 27 to that. Same for the gyro. Check if I'm doing the gyro. If I'm not doing the gyro, means I'm doing the barometer, which is the default, then do that. If I'm doing the gyro, I want you to turn it all off if I'm not doing the gyro. If I'm doing the barometer, turn all the LEDs off. Turn it on as a warning, 27. Turn it on as a warning if I'm doing the gyro. So we have to put that script so that it runs all the time. So we assign that as an aircraft automated script, and it's in my cockpit group, and I've called it the 172 cockpit LEDs. Add that there, and it's a repeating function. It just runs all the time. So now when I press this, you should see, I put it into putting it into here, into bank A, you can see that it just warns me, so I know which one I'm pressing. As I click on the toggle, it changes between them. What you would do now is you would get this template here and you would save that current setup as a template. Now I've already called my one the HC172 cockpit, I believe I called it. HC172 530 cockpit. So I'm just going to overwrite. Yep. So if I clear this, enter this current config here, if I wanted that in here, I will just apply the template, and that will apply everything. Including that aircraft automated script has been brought back in again. So that's everything for this video. There's one or two little bits to tidy up in one more video of a few little functions to add in, but we're getting there, we're nearly there now. So I'll see you in the next video.